Hey everybody, coming at you with a video today about Notre Dame and the playoffs. Okay, so before I get into this, I want to make it clear, this is not a trash talking video about Notre Dame, right? I don't have anything against them, right? They even beat us this year, so I have no room to talk. I'm talking as a college football fan, and when I say that Notre Dame did not belong in the playoffs. So I got my notes here. You know, I'm not like yelling or anything. This isn't not trying to joan on anybody. Not trying to piss off any Notre Dame fans, all right? But I do have some concerns. I do think the committee messed up. I don't think Notre Dame belonged in the playoffs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why. In fact, you can change the name of the team, and I'll agree with you. Like if another team was in Notre Dame's place, I would look at them and say, yeah, that team doesn't belong in the playoffs, right? Although there are some things about Notre Dame that make it even more so, if that makes sense, right? We all know that they haven't won a major postseason bowl game in 30 years. This year was not going to be any different, okay? The only difference from this year is that we should have been spared having to see them get blown out in the playoff or whatever, because we saw it the week before or the last game before in the ACC championship, right? They got blown out by Clemson, and that is still fresh in everybody's minds. Let's cut the crap here. We all know why they were able to beat Clemson in the first game match with them, right? Clemson had half their defense missing, and Trevor Lawrence missing, and they barely squeaked out like a overtime win, right? So we all know why that happened. Much as we want to be like, well, yeah, they're good, that's why they won. Well, we all know why. If I was on the committee, I would take that into consideration, right? Because we saw what happens when you get... First, we saw what happens when you get a crippled, hurt, injured, COVID Clemson, right? And then we saw what happens when you get a full-strength Clemson versus Notre Dame, right? So, and Clemson this year, not even as good as Alabama. So you get blown out by Clemson in the ACC championship. Not even a close game in the ACC championship. You get blown out by Clemson. What do you think Bama's gonna do? We knew this was going to happen. It was a given, right? Okay, it was fun. The first game that they had together was an ESPN instant classic, right? And it's fun to think like they're good, but we saw in the rematch who they really were. You know, they had to have been let in on that win alone, really, because you take that away, and what argument do they have to get in the playoffs? I mean, 12-7 win over Louisville? We beat Louisville by 20. But, yeah, anyway. We all know why they beat Clemson. And God, I sound like a Clemson fan. I know with the, visit to Clemson and the Trevor Lawrence video, and now I'm, defending their loss against Notre Dame. I swear I'm not a Clemson fan. I don't know, they're irrelevant. So, I guess so. I don't like Trevor Lawrence. But other than that, I don't really have anything for Clemson. Also they're playing Georgia week 1, so obviously I'm going to cheer for them then. So, yeah, not really a Clemson fan, but when the circumstances are right, I'll either jump to their fence, or when they do something wrong, I don't know. I mean, they got embarrassed by Ohio State in the first round of the playoffs this year, so yeah, not a Clemson fan. What makes you think that if they get blown out by Clemson, that they have any chance against Bama, right? And I know a lot of teams on here don't have a chance against Bama. That's fine. I'll talk about that too. Nobody was going to beat Bama, and you know what? That's fine. Just put somebody in who might have a chance. You don't know, right? We knew Notre Dame was going to get blown out. We didn't know for sure any of these other teams, right? I'll talk about those. Well, first of all, there were undefeated teams, okay, that got in over Notre Dame. And I just don't think, I mean, we just saw Notre Dame get blown out. Who wanted to see another blowout? We all knew it was going to happen, right? There's undefeated teams in the league, and I know it's Cincinnati, but besides the undefeated teams, I still think that there were teams that deserved to get in above Notre Dame. Notre Dame was exposed in the ACC championship. Okay, I would go as far as to say they didn't belong in an expanded 8-team playoff, right? I mean, I can just think of other teams that, you know, I just, maybe they squeak in at the last spot. Then you get to watch them get blown out again by Alabama, right? I think the 4 playoff system is really small and reserved for the elite teams. And to be honest, this year, there's 3 elite teams, right? Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. There's 3 elite teams this year, and it's their playoff, right? So I have a video coming on what my expanded playoff would look like. I have a lot of off-season content planned, and playoff expansion video is one of them. Okay, so I got a video about who would get the 5 through 8 spots, but in this video, I'm going to talk about who could have possibly gotten the 4th spot. Texas A&M, right? So, haven't seen them getting blown out in a while, right? Notre Dame got blown out last week. When's the last time that Texas A&M got blown out? I think it was week 2, right? Week 2 they got blown out. And guess who it was by? It was by Alabama, the number 1 team. Okay? So, Clemson, the number 2 or 3 or whatever team it was, blows out Notre Dame last week, and that's a worse loss. That's just a worse loss than blown out by Bama, the number 1 team, in week 2. Yeah, they probably lose again, but I don't think that they would have blown out Texas A&M, you know? It's hard to beat the same team twice, which obviously Alabama could do it. But to blow out the same team twice? Okay, Texas A&M has, they're pissed off, you know? They're trying to prove something. They're not going to come in and just get blown out again. They're in the playoff, and Texas A&M is always, has a chip on their shoulder because they're tired of being called the best 7-3 team in the world or whatever. They're tired of being second fiddle to all these teams. They finally popped up and beat Florida, which, by the way, Florida had just gone, and speaking of the last week, the championship week, Florida had just gone to the wire with Alabama. Florida played Alabama the closest that anyone has played them this year, right? And Texas A&M beat them, recently. Okay, the blowout was all the way back in week 2, man. I don't think you can hold that against them like you can hold the Notre Dame blowout against Clemson. I think Texas A&M had a better strength of schedule. SEC, I'm a Georgia Tech fan, which I don't like the ACC getting crapped on, but SEC's better than ACC. It's just what it is, in the SEC schedule, Texas A&M went undefeated except for the number 1 team. Okay, even against Florida, who had just gone to the wire with Bama the week before, right? And yeah, I know that they already played Bama, so that's kind of boring to get the rematch, which I don't know that I would put them in the 4th spot. I'd have to probably think long and hard about it. Well, I'd give it to Cincy, personally. I'll just put that out there now. But in this particular year, because we've already seen Texas A&M get blown out, but like everybody's had their shot at, or not everybody's had a shot at Bama. Texas A&M did. So I can see that argument being used against Texas A&M as to why they should be let in. But it was week 2. Improvement is a thing, improvement over the season. And speaking of improvement over the season, Oklahoma. Yes, I would rather see Oklahoma come in the playoff and lose in the first round again for like the 5th year in a row. Yeah, I'd rather see that than to see Notre Dame get blown out. We just saw Notre Dame get blown out. I'm tired of seeing Notre Dame get blown out. Unless it's Bomber Jackets, boy. Yeah, come on. But anyway. But dude, I mean, Oklahoma has improved tremendously. Spencer Rattler, he came out looking like crap. Like he didn't know what he was doing the first couple games that they lost. Then I think they really started to turn around. They had that insane game with Texas, the 7 overtime game. And, since then, I just think they've improved. They managed to come back around and beat Iowa State, who they lost to earlier. That was one of their losses early in the season. Pretty comfortably, I would say, in the Big 12 championship. And they're just a scary team. Like, we saw what they did with Florida in their bowl game, which not really much to go off of because Florida's whole team was missing. But they're still an SEC team. They still got talent, I guess. I wouldn't use that as evidence because, well, I'm acting like I'm the playoff committee trying to decide on the 4th spot. So we're going back in time. You know what I mean? So if you were to do maybe say a power rankings, Oklahoma would be in the top. What had to have been in the top 4? The power rankings. You want to look at that? I think Oklahoma would be above Texas A&M, and maybe above Ohio State. Even I don't know. So. Pretty much with Oklahoma, I think that they would have had a better shot than Notre Dame, obviously. I think there's some teams that would have had a better shot than Notre Dame, obviously. But I guess you gotta count losses, right? 2-loss team just in this year, or in the 4-team playoff system. I just don't think a 2-loss team can get in. It's just so exclusive, and it should be. Well, I think there should be 8 teams, but that's a video for soon, coming up. Yeah, I know you gotta count losses, so maybe not Oklahoma, not the best argument to get in the playoffs, but of the 3 teams I'm going to talk about right here, they do have the best shot, I think, at making it a good game at least against Bama. But you gotta count losses, right? So, speaking of the elephant in the room, with no losses, Cincinnati. Yeah, I know. They are a G5 team. Play a crappier schedule. Listen, I'm not a real big buyer into the G5 thing. I think the AAC is a good conference, and the Sun Belt too, right? In an 8-team system, I would have Coastal get in, which they're both undefeated. Cincinnati, Coastal, I think they should both be up there in the top 10, in my opinion. I think they both would have an equal claim, but yeah, Cincinnati. No, I don't care that they lost their ball, okay? Cincinnati, I'm talking as if I'm in the playoff committee selecting teams, right? So, no, I don't care that they lost their bowl. Which, by the way, okay, I've heard the argument said, well, since he lost to Georgia and Georgia's not a playoff team. Well, okay, why is everybody ranking Georgia number 1 and 2 in the next preseason? Because they're getting all their players back. I mean, unless you're saying, so you're saying that Georgia's team will be good next year because it's going to be mostly the same team, right? If they're the number 1 and 2 team, then what does that make sense to you? You know? I think Georgia's in the same boat. Much as I hate them, I think they're in the same boat as Oklahoma, right? They're just better than they were, obviously, with Stetson Bennett. Okay? They're still rode the struggle bus against Cincy. Their bowl game was a hard to gauge on who was good or what, because, well, Georgia hasn't been really tested since the Florida game, and so it's hard to say if they were, up there with Bama, Clemson, Ohio State. I mean, if anything, I think that their bowl game against Georgia proved that they can run with the big boy SEC. Okay, they had the game in their pocket. They just wanted to lose it more. That's all it was. They pulled a damn Georgia on themselves against Georgia. Unbelievable. They had something like a 99.9%. I'm going off on a tangent right now. Okay, we're talking about the playoffs, right? Cincinnati in the playoffs, right? Yeah, unbelievable. You're going to let Notre Dame in over these guys? We knew Notre Dame was getting blown out. And Cincy, yeah, they might have, but that's my thing with all these teams is that they might have got blown out. Notre Dame was going to get blown out. They weren't going to improve magically and, they got a chip on their shoulder. No, Notre Dame's incapable of winning these games. It's just a fact of Notre Dame, and this is totally sounds like I'm trash talking them, but I mean, sorry, it's just a fact. It's a COVID year, right? You've got 3 elite teams, and you've got pretty much nobody else that can compete with them, right? So, for years now, with the UCF thing, there's been arguments of the G5 getting in the playoffs, right? So it's a COVID year. Most likely, whoever's going to get put against Bama gets blown out. So why not put the G5 team in that's undefeated? You could. So if they get blown out, or when they get blown out, you could point at you could use your evil committee plans to keep the G5 out, keep the little guys down, keep the G5 out of the conference. You put them in this year, and they get blown out, and then you never have to put them in again, I guess, until the 18 playoff. But you would never have to hear everybody clamoring for the undefeated G5 team to get in. So you can put these guys in there and say and have them lose to the best Bama team in the whole world, and then point it this year and say, see, we won't put them in now because you're gonna have other undefeated G5 teams. How Cincinnati might go undefeated next year, and then you can point it this year and say, see, they got blown out or lost or whatever. We don't got to put them in no more, unless they beat. That would foil their evil plans, wouldn't it? So that's why they didn't let them in. Because they would foil their plans of keeping the status quo and keeping the big guys winning the championships. They don't want some scrappy young team coming in and whooping up on the big boys and making them look silly, right? No, Cincinnati would come in this game super, they would have come in this game with the world on their shoulders like, oh my God, we're the first G5 team in the playoff. We worked so hard to get here, and we're going up against the number 1 team, the best Alabama team ever. They're going to play their hearts out. They're going to leave it all on the field. It would be a great game to watch whether they get blown out or not. Notre Dame just laid down and took it. You think Cincinnati would do that? I don't think so. I don't think that they played probably their best game against Georgia, and I think that they would have come out and give them a good look. That's what I think. You know, they might have got blown out maybe, but what if they didn't? They would have made history. They would have made history. They could have been the first G5 champions, or first G5 team to make the playoff, and then the first team to win it. I think it would change the course of college football forever. Just this happening, you know? The lines will be blurred between P5 and G5. Who knows what would have happened? I think it would have had, I think it would have been legendary, and it would have had lasting effects throughout the NCAA land, throughout the world. But some committee has their own evil plans, so they don't want Cincy in there. What if they beat Bama? You know, can't have that, right? Whatever. I just think it's ridiculous. I think it's a broken system that any FBS team can go undefeated and not make it to the playoffs. They were literally perfect, right? They couldn't have done any better. I know that a couple close fans, whatever. Those were good against good teams, right? I think that that's a broken system, and that's why one of the reasons why I would want an expanded playoff. But it's just not right that a team can not do any better, right? They didn't lose any games, and then not make it in the playoffs and get it and not get in over, especially of Notre Dame. You're gonna let Notre Dame in over these guys? You know, those are the three I'm gonna talk about because, well, personally, I wouldn't. There's a couple more teams I would put over Notre Dame, but those three just have the best, most obvious arguments. Notre Dame probably has a better argument, I guess. They just really lean on the Clemson thing, and we all know why they beat Clemson in the first place. I mean, anybody who watches football, understands football, knows why they beat Clemson. Okay, they're just not elite. They didn't have a shot at the playoffs at all.